Well, hey there, brothers and sisters, and welcome to a new day. And because it's a new day, here is your daily dose of encouragement from your friends here at 1118. So glad that you decided to stop by and listen a little bit. As we begin, I've just got a quick question for you. Who did you reach out to yesterday? The encouragement, the challenge, if you will, was to reach out to someone who's a shut-in, maybe one of your older Pray For Me partners, whatever it might be. Who did you reach out to? I'd love to know. Tell me a story about how that conversation went. How did they feel after they heard from you? Please share that with us. You can do that in the comments below or shoot me a text or an email. Would love to hear from you about that experience. Another question I would have for you is, hey, how's that time with Jesus going? Things are different. Things are new. We're learning how to adjust with all this extra time. You've got the opportunity. What's it look like to be spending time with Jesus? How is he meeting with you? How is he encouraging your heart in this season? I would love to hear about that. Again, comment below, shoot me a text, an email, whatever it might be. Join us on Discord. I just want to know what's going on there. So today we're going to jump back into Esther. It's just been kind of fun as I've read through the Old Testament and I'm getting to the end. In fact, I believe that pretty soon I'm going to be all done with the Old Testament and able to jump back into the New. But it's been neat to kind of see how God has been using those times in Esther and in Ezra and in Nehemiah to really encourage me. And so I'm just going to bring that to you today because I've been doing my ransom Bible study method with these texts. And I just want to share a little bit about what's been going on and how God has spoken to me in those times. So if you remember where we left off, Mordecai had reached out to Esther saying, listen, bad things are about to happen. We need your help. Perhaps you are prepared for such a time as even this. And Esther comes back and says, okay, you guys fast and pray, and then I'm going to go approach the king. And if I die, I die. So in chapter 6, we've got Esther approaching the king. And she does so very humbly. And by the grace of God, the king shows her favor. He reaches out his scepter to her and shows her favor and asks, what can I do for you? And Esther invites him to a feast. She actually invites the king and Haman, who, if you'll remember, is the cause of all the problems, to a big feast. And they have that feast, and Haman leaves feeling really encouraged, like, man, look at me, I'm so great. No one else got to come except for me and the king to the queen's feast. This is fantastic. And his family, Haman's family, is kind of like, this is great. It's your chance to get back at Mordecai. Because Haman's like, no matter how much accolade I get, as long as Mordecai's around, it's not worth anything. So his family says, okay, go build a gallows and then get ready to hang Mordecai when all is said and done. So that night before the second feast, the king can't sleep. And so he calls for the records to be brought, and he happens to read a record about Mordecai, about how Mordecai had helped to uncover a plot, and because of that, the king's life was preserved. And so the next morning, as he kind of walks in, and Haman shows up, and the king asks Haman, what should be done for the man that I want to honor? And Haman thinks he's talking about himself, and so he says, do all of these great and grand things. And the king turns to him and says, okay, Haman, go and do that for Mordecai. So Haman, in shame, has to go and help Mordecai or honor Mordecai before all of the people, and he's just seething inside, and he's fuming. Well, then later on, Esther has a second feast, and she invites the king and Haman to that feast, and the king asks, what can I do for you, my queen? And that's when Esther drops the bombshell. King, you can save my people. You can save me, because my life is in jeopardy. And the king gets outraged and says, what's going on? And so she says, Haman is the one that has done this. And like the king storms out. He's so angry, and Haman just pleads with Esther, please don't kill me. And the king comes back in and sees Haman assaulting Esther, and he calls for the guards, and it just gets really bad. In fact, Haman is hung from the very same gallows that he prepared for Mordecai. And so in one sense, the plot has been foiled, but there's still the law. The edict has gone out. The Jews are going to be attacked on this day. And so Esther says, king, you've got to do something. And the king says, I've written it. It can't be undone. But here's my signet. Here, go and write your own edict. And that's when Esther and Mordecai work together, and Mordecai comes up with, hey, the Jews can just defend themselves. And suddenly everything is okay. Go read the rest of Esther. It's worth it. But here's kind of what I got as I was reading that last little bit of Esther. Throughout the entire book, God's not actually mentioned. It's not as though he shows up and speaks. It's not as though he shows up and does something. God is very hidden. God is almost behind the scenes, behind the curtain. And yet, even though he's hidden, for the one who's paying attention, you can see God's fingerprints throughout the entire book. I mean, just consider it. Why is Esther the one that is chosen? It's the grace of God. It's God's hand in that. Or consider the fact that when Esther approaches the king, who was it that made sure that the king was in a good mood or the king was going to show her favor? It's God. God's working in the ordinary. God's working in the background. Or think about this. Why did the king have a sleepless night? And why did it just so happen to be that one chronicle, that one record that talked about Mordecai? Why was that the one that the king happened to read that night? It's all the hand of God as God works in the ordinary, as God works in the hidden. I mean, that's how God tends to operate. I know a lot of us really want God to work in big and miraculous ways. We read the scriptures and we tend to see a lot of that. But you got to understand that in each one of those big instances of God showing up in a grand way, there's a lot of years between the other pieces. It's not like God is always doing that. God normally works through the ordinary, the mundane. He works behind the scenes. And we see that almost just as much as we see the big miraculous events. And so here's the thing for you right now. I mean, God is working in the ordinary. Though we may not see him in the midst of all this craziness that's going on around us, God is still, in fact, present. He is still working. For the one who's paying attention, we can see it. And that's actually why we do God hunts now and then in youth group. I'll ask you, hey, where have you seen God show up in your life? And what I'm asking you to do, what we're trying to get you to do is to look at your life and to recognize where God is actually working in the ordinary, in the mundane, in the circumstances of your day-to-day life. I think most of us, though, we're pretty much practical atheists. It's a term that's coined a long time ago, but it's like we'll acknowledge that there is a God, but we live our life as though God does not exist. Everything we do on our own strength. But when we pay attention and we start looking for where is God moving in my life? Where is God working in these circumstances? Well, suddenly we recognize that we're not in control, that it's not all about us, and that we really do need him more and more. And suddenly we turn from being practical atheists to being practical theists. And so here's my challenge for you guys today. Look back over just the past couple of days. Where have you seen God working in and among the mundane, the ordinary? Where have you seen him kind of moving from behind the curtain, from behind the scenes? Identify one or two instances of God working in your life. And then I want you to go and I want you to tell someone about it. Text a friend. Ask them, hey, where have you seen God? Text me. Call that friend that you made yesterday when you reached out to our senior saints. Share with them, here's where God's been working in my life. And if you're just having a really tough time identifying one of those instances, well, get with a friend and say, hey, help me to look for God. Just like Esther, sometimes God doesn't come up in our regular conversations. Sometimes we don't see him in these big miraculous ways, but he is still moving. He's still working in the ordinary things of life. Be looking for him today, friends. That's all I got for this time. So keep the faith, friends. Know that I love you. I'm praying for you. I miss you. And Lord willing, we'll be able to see each other again soon. God bless.